Okay, welcome to the BT revision video. I'm just going to get started, try and keep these videos as short as possible. Um, so, the screen won't change. Bear with me 1 second. Okay, right. 5 kingdoms of life. I've been through this before, guys. These are the 5 kingdoms. Okay, there's plants, animals, fungi, protoctista, and prokaryotes. And these numbers over here tell you how many things that you have to actually have to remember for each one. So for plants, there's 2, which is uses light for photosynthesis, and number 2 is have a cell wall made of cellulose. For animals, there's 3, which is feeds on other organisms, is multicellular, which means that they're made of lots of different kinds of cells, like us, skin cells, blood cells, etc. And they don't have cell walls, so animals never have cell walls. Fungi, they make spores instead of seeds. Okay, that's one. And they have a cell wall made from chitin. Okay, not from chitin or however else people want to pronounce it. It's chitin. Protoctista is just one thing you have to remember, and protoctista is only made up of one cell. Prokaryotes, they have no nucleus and they have a cell wall, but it's not made from cellulose. Okay, those are the two things: no nucleus and a cell wall not made from cellulose. I wouldn't put too much stock into remembering all of these, but you can remember some of these. That'll be fantastic. Okay, but just make sure that you do know the 5 kingdoms that you do get. Okay, now arthropods. Now arthropods can be split into different classes. Okay, and those are insects. Okay, you know something's an insect when it has 3 body segments and 6 legs, like a beetle. Arachnids, they have 2 body segments and 8 legs, like a spider or a scorpion. So if you see a picture of either of those, you know it's an arachnid. Then there are crustaceans, 2 body segments and 10 legs, like a crab or a lobster. And myriapods, 2 body segments and lots of legs, a little bit like a millipede or a centipede, something along the lines of that. So this is a picture of what they will look like. So obviously you know that this has basically got 10 legs, and it's hard exoskeleton. Okay, and that makes it a crab. Okay, this is a beetle. Okay, 3 body segments, 6 legs, meaning it must be a insect. That's pretty much how this works. If I were you guys, I'd pause this video and just have a look at them and see if you can identify which ones they are, and just check this video over here to make sure, this part of the slide, to make sure that you know which ones that they are. Okay, and like it says over here, arthropods are basically, they have an exoskeleton, a segmented body, which means it's in different sections, and jointed legs, no backbone, and are cold-blooded. So they're part of the animal kingdom without a backbone, which makes them invertebrates. Yeah, and their skeleton is on the outside. That's what it means by exoskeleton. Okay, those are the main things that you have to remember. Okay, so you have to know Carl Linnaeus' system of classification. Okay, and that is this right here. And easy peasy, it's kings play chess on fine glass sets. Okay, so those are the order of everything that you have to remember. Okay, so make sure that don't just remember kings play chess on fine glass sets. You've got to know what all of it stands for. And like I've already told you guys, when you're trying to remember the mnemonic for this, write it down. Write down the letters for it. So write KPCOFGS when you're trying to write it. Yeah, kings play chess on fine glass sets, and you'll automatically remember what these are. Evolutionary tree. Not going to dwell too much on this. This just looks at how closely related things are. So, for example, you can see a human is very closely related to a chimp, but a human is not too closely related to a dog. And which one is most closely related to a horse? And it is the dog. Okay, moving on. Species. They are members of the same species that can mate together and produce fertile offspring. Okay, so this is being mated with a tiger and a lion, and this is not a species. Okay, because this has not got any reproductive organs, so it couldn't have baby ligers of its own. Okay, so it's not a species, neither is this. This is a horse and a zebra being mated together, not a species. Okay, the binomial classification system, if it gives you a long Latin name of a species, and it'll be one that you would never have heard of before. Obviously, everyone's already heard of Tyrannosaurus Rex, but they'll give you another name of something that you haven't heard, and you need to know, if it asks you what the genus is, it's referring to that first name of the 2 species. That's what binomial means. It's a binomial name the word bi meaning two. Okay, just like binoculars is two lenses. Okay, or binocular, which is two eyes seeing from the sides of heads. Okay, so if it gives you, for example, humans, Homo sapiens, what's the genus? It's the Homo bit. Okay, if it shows you the wolf, Canis lupus, it'll be the Canis bit. Okay, that'll be the genus, and the last bit will be the species. Okay, look at this food chain. Which organism is a carnivore? Carnivore is something that just eats something else. So in this case, it will be the starfish because it's eating the limpet. Another one, it could be cod because it's eating the starfish. Okay, the arrows always point to the direction that the energy is going in. So the limpet is consuming the seaweed because the energy from the seaweed is going towards the limpet. Which organism is at trophic level 3? Well, trophic level just basically means feeding level. So trophic level 3 is actually 1, 2, 3. It's the starfish. What is the producer? It's the seaweed. The producer is always the one that photosynthesizes. I need to go slower. Okay, name the herbivore. Herbivore was one that eats herbs. Okay, so that is going to be the limpet. Okay, herbs being any kind of plant thing. Okay, or plant organism. Name an organism that eats starfish. Right here, what eats the starfish? It's going to be the cod because the energy is going that way. Where does the energy in the food chain come from? It comes from the seaweed, which comes from the sun. Okay, because the seaweed, again, is the producer. Okay, I'm not going to go through all of these, but basically just to match them up to where they go. Okay, so just have a look at this. Pause this video and try and match them up for yourself. I don't want to do it for you, but the descriptions are right here, guys. And start with the easy ones that you know. Everyone knows what a carnivore is. You know what a herbivore is. And you know what a producer is, and you should be able to figure the rest out. And I've already told you what a trophic level is. So try and match this up, take your time and have a look for it. And maybe even write them out again afterwards to make sure that you do know what they are. Okay, pyramid of numbers versus a pyramid of biomass. Okay, so pyramid of numbers basically just counts the number of organisms at each stage. Okay, and you can see that. So, for example, this is a very simple food chain. You've got the tree, you've got the green fly, and you've got the, well, you've got an aphid, and you've got the ladybird. And pyramid of numbers basically shows the oak tree being as 1, aphids being about 10,000, and ladybirds being about 200. And if you put them on a pyramid of numbers, it looks like this. A little bit silly, isn't it? Okay, because they're saying that the oak tree is just 1. And so it's equivalent to just 1 plant. That doesn't make any sense because it doesn't take size into account. Sorry, my phone just keeps vibrating. So what you do is just weigh the organisms instead. And you can do that by getting the pyramid of biomass. And you can see that it actually makes more sense now. And it shows the oak tree probably weighing at right 500,000 kilograms. And number of aphids, 1,000. And in terms of the weight, and the ladybirds 50. And it gives it a better distribution, doesn't it? You can see that it's more realistic because the producer should always be the biggest. Okay, and it should get smaller as you go up. And you guys know that you lose energy as you go through the food chain. So that's why the pyramid gets smaller and smaller. So yeah, so that's just a reminder of pyramid of numbers versus pyramid of biomass. Okay, and this is another reminder showing the oak tree. This is how it would be represented with pyramid of numbers. But if you take biomass, it looks a little bit more normal. Okay. Food webs. Okay, food webs to show again the direction where the energy goes in. But in real life, organisms are eaten not just by one thing, but by many different things. Okay. So you can see the algae. Okay, and the algae is obviously the prawns eat the algae, the carp eat the algae, and so do the slugs. So different things eat them. And if you look at the prawns, okay, the prawns actually eat the algae and the waterweed. Okay, now if you look at the trout eat the prawns and they also eat the carp. Okay, so they can eat two things. Imagine what would happen if all the carp suddenly died. Through a disease or something like that, what would happen to the number of prawns? Well, you could say that they get. Some people might think that they go up because they might eat more algae, have more algae and more waterweed to eat, but that doesn't actually happen. What happens is that the trout, because they've got no carp to eat, would eat more prawns, so the number of prawns would actually go down. So there might be a question on food webs asking what would happen if one organism went down. And so you've got to use a little bit of common sense and think to yourself, well, one organism in there, the other organism has got to eat more of the other one to be able to survive. So that's how food webs can be very, very complicated. Okay. Now, energy in a food chain. Now, guys, I've already explained this, but as you go along a food chain, okay, like a simple one here, energy is lost as you go through it. Okay, so why is energy lost? Okay, in actual fact, not just why is energy lost, you have to know how much energy is actually lost. So when the sun actually produces, when the plants actually photosynthesize, they lose a lot of that energy from the sun. Okay, but as soon as it gets to the producer, as you go up to every other level after that, 90% is lost. So actually, only 10% gets passed on from organism to organism. So from the caterpillar, okay, only 10% of the energy from the caterpillar is making it to the blue tit, and then 10% of all the energy from the blue tit is making it to the sparrowhawk, which is why the mass gets lower as you go up as the biomass. Okay, so you guys have to know why. Why? Well, because some of the energy is lost for movement, okay, or respiration. Some of it is lost in urine. Some of it is lost in feces, and some of it is not all parts of the animal's organism is going to get eaten. Okay, so that's another way in how energy is lost. So there's many different ways, and you have to know them. So their movement, that's respiration. There is through loss through feces and urine. And not all parts of the organism being eaten. That's essentially how energy is lost. Okay, carbon cycle. Now, carbon cycle basically is very simple, and it just people get really confused at the carbon cycle. I have no idea why, but they shouldn't do. Okay, because what happens with the carbon cycle is it shows how carbon dioxide is actually recycled by things. So, for example, if there's carbon dioxide in the air, is it going to stay there? No, it's not. Okay, some of it is taken in by photosynthesis by the plants. Okay, you can see this big massive tree being taking the carbon dioxide out. Okay, and basically what else happens is animals would also once the carbon is part of the plant, animals also eat that carbon and it might go into the animal. Okay, and also the animal is going to be doing one process that happens all the time is respiration. Okay, now as you know, we all breathe out carbon dioxide because we are respiring. Okay, we are doing the process of respiration, and that releases carbon dioxide. When organisms die, bacteria, etc., eat them, otherwise known as decomposers, and they are going to put the carbon back into the soil, which again takes something by the plants, and then it changes. Okay, another one is combustion. So combustion, as you know, is burning. And we are burning all those fossil fuels and releasing carbon dioxide back in to the atmosphere, ready to be taken in by the tree, ready to be taken in by the animal, etc. So all of this is a cycle. Okay, and this particular one looks at the carbon cycle. Okay, same thing happens with the nitrogen cycle. Remember, 78% of the air is nitrogen, but that air is very, very unreactive, and it also gets recycled in, and plants can actually get that unreactive nitrogen and fix it. Okay, and what happens is when it's the nitrogen's in the soil, it's going to be in the soil as nitrates. Guys, you have to remember that. Okay, that the nitrogen is in the soil as nitrates, and then the plants take that nitrates up. Why is nitrogen so important? Because nitrogen actually, protein is made of nitrogen. Okay, well, there's a lot of nitrogen in protein, so that's why all of the living organisms need that nitrogen, but we can't just breathe that nitrogen in, again, because it's unreactive. So actually animals eat the nitrogen from the plants, okay, and then we eat the other animals, and that's how we get all the protein, but it all comes from the atmosphere, which is 78%. Okay, competition in animals and plants. Okay, now animals and plants compete for different things. Okay, like water, territory, etc. So what do you think plants compete for? They obviously compete for the following, which is light. That's the most important one they compete for, and obviously need it for photosynthesis, which is why some plants grow higher and wider than others, trying to get to the light. They compete for water as well, and they also compete for minerals in the soil. Remember, we talked about it's not just nitrates that they would compete for. They'd compete for the phosphorus in the and maybe the potassium. They would compete for that as well, and so on and so forth. So that's what plants compete for. Yeah, mainly light, water, and minerals. Animals, on the other hand, they compete for food. Yeah, they compete for water. They compete for territory. They also compete for mates as well. Like, remember the video I showed you guys on the bowerbird and how they decorate their their nests, trying to get the other bowerbirds in. Yeah. Always competing? No. Sometimes animals work together, and this is called mutualism. So the oxpecker and the buffalo is an example of this. I showed you guys the video and how the oxpecker was eating away at all the bogies of the oxpecker, and it's known as a cleaner species, yeah, because it cleans the other organism. It's not in the oxpecker's interest to eat it's not in the buffalo's interest to eat the oxpecker, because the oxpecker is busy cleaning it. Okay, so that is a benefit to him. Oxpecker gets food, buffalo gets clean. Win-win situation. Okay, but you have to remember, when two animals work together to help each other out, it's called mutualism. It's like mutual friends on Facebook. Yeah, kind of like very similar. Yeah, so mutualism is how you remember it. Okay, parasites. So this example we've just looked at is how the oxpecker and the buffalo were helping each other out. But sometimes parasites are ones, not sometimes, all the time, parasites are the ones that just feed on another living organism to be able to survive. This isn't mutualistic because the host, which is the person that it's feeding on, does not benefit. Okay, like tapeworms living inside animals. Okay, they take food. How is it different? Again, just explain this, in that the parasite only take from the host. The host doesn't give they don't give back to the host. Okay, they just take. Yeah. Okay, and this is an example of a tapeworm inside the intestines of a human, and this tapeworm is just taking the food from the host, but it isn't giving anything back. Okay, it's just basically it's a parasite. Okay, predator and prey relationships. So the number of predator and the number of preys are linked. Okay, in what way are they linked? Well, this is a very simple. I showed you a more complicated one in class, but this is a very simple predator-prey relationship. So just imagine there's a number of prey. Like, for example, the one I showed you in class was about the lynx and the snowshoe hare. And what happens here is, imagine the hare would suddenly increase in number. They must be mating a lot, and there's a lot of food available for them, so their numbers go up. Now, the lynx, who feed on the snowshoe hare, suddenly there's loads of hares around, so they would start munching away, and then their predator numbers, because they've got so much food, that they would start hunting, and their numbers would start increasing because there's a plentiful supply of hare. Okay, but as their numbers start to increase, there's so many predators that the number of prey now come down. Okay, because the lynx are eating all the hare. Okay, so as their numbers come down, okay, the predator now don't have any food. Okay, and so if the predators don't have any food, their numbers will start to decline. But when their numbers decline, there's nothing eating the hare, and the hare increase again. And this cycle goes on and on and on. And guys, make sure that you don't just say that the prey increase, predators have more food, prey go down, the predator then go down. Can you explain the whole cycle, probably all the way down to here? Yeah. So predator, prey go up and down, and give the reasons for it, etc. Okay. Now, this is the example that I just gave you. This was the lynx, and that was the hare. Okay, and how they were eating each other. Okay, where a species lives is called its habitat. Okay, that's just a random fact. But cold climates. Okay, but you have to know about how animals are adapted to live under really, really cold conditions. Yeah, so it gets very cold, so minus 51 degrees, and so this looks at how animals are adapted to live in these really, really cold conditions. So, how they're adapted. So Arctic animals, the ones that live in the cold, must be able to survive in really, really cold conditions. And so they would lose heat through their body surface, mainly through their skin. But Arctic animals have adapted many adaptations to help them survive. Okay, so these Arctic animals have lots of different adaptations to be able to help them survive these very, very cold places. So you've got to know what kind of adaptations they all have. Okay, now, so they have thick oily fur, because if they go in the water and it's oil on the fur, the water will just straight away come off. These are all the ones you guys have to know, guys. Okay, layers of blubber under the skin, basically lots of fat under the skin. May change colour in the summer, because in the summer it's going to get a little bit hot. So not hot, but the ice is going to melt and the landscape is going to change, and so they must change with it. Otherwise, if they're still white, they'll easily be able to get spotted by the prey or the predator, whichever way around it is for that particular organism. They have small ears, okay, to lose less body heat from, by the way. So the smaller the ears are, the less heat you can lose. large furry feet. It keeps them warm and also provides grip, and often longer snout, and rounded body shape. Now, body shape, you can see here that all of them have a very round body shape, and the reason being is you can see that there, and the reason being is because of something called the surface area to volume ratio. Animals lose heat from all surfaces that they're in touch with, so they've got to reduce the amount of contact surface to reduce the amount of heat loss. Now, I haven't explained that very well, but if you just imagine looking at this block over here, and it was split up into 4 different blocks, can you see how there's more surfaces where they could lose body heat? Can you see that? Yeah? Okay. So this has a smaller surface area to volume ratio. Well, this has a smaller surface area to volume ratio. This has a larger one. Okay, because all the surfaces are exposed, but the volume of it has stayed the same. Yeah, can you see how this is locked away? Lots of its surfaces, and that's why animals are round. Okay, and hot animals that live in the desert tend to be very long to expose as much of their surface to the outside as possible. Okay, now looking at desert animals, it can get between 45 and 50 during the day. That is hot. Okay, and fall below 0 at night, and there's less than 25 centimeters of rain a year, which is not very much at all. So they have to survive in really, really hot conditions, and they also have to survive with a lack of water. So they have lots of different adaptations to be able to help them. Okay, and they don't want to sweat too much because they'll obviously lose a lot of water. So you can see all these different animals, and the first one that comes to mind is the fact that they've all got massive ears. And as I remind you that the cold animals that live in the cold have very small ears, but the ones that live in the desert have very, very, very big ears, and so they can lose as much heat from them as possible. Okay, and they also have very, very long legs. Okay, and that allows them to be able to lose as much heat as possible. And so these are all the ones you have to know. Okay, let's cut to the chase. Long, large, thin ears, little body fat, thin, silky fur. Long limbs, that means legs, to help spread out the heat, and they're often only active at night. They're normally only active at night because it's a little bit cooler, so they can move around. If they're moving around during the day, they'd get very, very hot, lose a lot of water, and it wouldn't be very good. An elongated body shape. You can see that from a camel, can't you guys? Long legs, and all of its fat is actually stored in the hump, not water. It's all fat, and it's all stored in one place, so the animal can lose as much body heat, so there's no blubber stopping heat loss. It can lose as much heat as possible. Okay, you can see that, and it has very, very thin body shapes. You can see that, not very, very spread out to lose as much body heat from it as possible. Okay, so you can see the difference there. Apologies for the rubbish drawing, and you can see the comparison. I'm not going to ask you guys to compare them, but if I were you, I'd just pause it and look, and you can look at the differences for yourself between the one that lives in the desert, like a desert fox, and an Arctic fox. Yeah, two complete different adaptations to match their environment. Okay, you have to know about how plants are adapted as well. Okay, now plants basically store water in their stems, and they're called succulents. Okay, so some plants have no leaves. They have a root system which allows the root to spread out wide, but close to the surface to pick up as much groundwater as possible. Okay, there you go. You can see the extensive rooting system. It's quite crazy. They've got spines to protect themselves from being eaten. They grow slower, so they need less energy. They've got hair to shade the plant, reducing water loss, and big underground rooting system, and thick stem to stop water loss. I'll just remember the thick stem and the spines, and waxy cuticle as well. I must miss that out, but that really, really does help as well. So those are the ones. Again, guys, when you look through the bullet points, just feel free to pause it anytime that you want to. Evolution. I'm going to stop the video right there. I think that will be part 1 of the video, and then we'll see how that turns out, and you can just go to part 2 of the B2 revision video. Okay, guys? Remember, guys, watch the videos as many times as you can and go through it. I know I've rushed through it, trying to keep the time short, but that doesn't mean that you can't go back and rewind the bits that you need to know. Okay? So that's part 1 of the revision video. Well done.